So one of the things as a promoter of Alberta or Western independence in general, we have to do is answer valid questions from people. People are worried. Change, can be nerve wracking, especially if you're already dependent on some of the things that the current federation provides. And pension is a question that comes up all the time. Is my pension going to be safe if there's an independence move? If Alberta leaves, what happens to my Canada pension? And it's a fair question. It's a good one. And to start with, your pension is perfectly fine. Look, there's no way, whether we move to a new pension plan within Alberta or if a pension plan is formed when we become independent, that you would get any less than your current entitlements. In fact, there's a very good chance you will get more. But, don't just take my word for it. I'll explain. Let's go through some of the numbers to begin with. To start with, the Canada pension plan isn't very good. For somebody, if that's all you're getting and you've worked your whole life to put into it, I understand you still want to get what you deserve out of that. Absolutely. And you should. But you're not getting a good return on what you put in. The average monthly pension payout for somebody in Canada is $900. Now, I understand that's usually if it's a person who's on a fixed income, low income, you're going to get OAS and GIS, which is Old Age Security Guaranteed Income Supplement on top of that. But even then, you're living pretty meagerly. And if you don't have other side savings or pension plans or whatnot, it's not a heck of a lot to go on. But it's something. And it maxes out at $1,400 a month for the CPP. So, again, that's not a really good return on your money, considering you had to put in a whole lifetime of paying into it. Now, we've got Alberta over contributes into the Canada pension plan about $5 billion a year, more than it draws out. So people putting money into it are putting in $5 billion more than the amount of seniors collecting. And the reason for it, you see, this is similar to the equalization thing, which I'll explain on a different video. Yes, I understand everybody in Canada is under the same pension plan per capita, but the thing is with Alberta, we've got a younger demographic, a lot more young people here working, and a higher income. So a lot more people are maxing out their pension payments every month into the plan. So it means that, again, we're putting in $5 billion more than we take out. So, already right off the bat, if Alberta forms its own plan, we're sitting $5 billion a year better than we were, and how we're going to deal with things. Now, Canada's pension plan is a partial user pay-as-you-go plan. And the reason it's partial, I'll give some credit where it's due, is Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin actually fixed it in the 90s. It used to be pure pay-as-you-go. There was no fund, there was no asset pool. It's just money was taxed in from people, and it was put out in payments to people collecting a pension. And in other words, it was just a welfare program. It wasn't actually a pension plan. So they changed it, they reduced the benefits, and they increased the payments, and brought it to the point where they started to build an asset pool like a proper pension plan, which is a good thing. Better late than never, I guess you could say. So it's built up a fund, I'm just looking here, worth about $700 billion right now. That still doesn't cover all of the liabilities. There's still about $355 billion of unfunded liability. So they're collecting more than they take in every year with it, and it's building a fund, which is good. But they still, if they had to pay it all out all at once, they'd be about, where was that? Yeah, $355 billion short. And that number is getting smaller every year. They're paying that down. That's fine. That's good. And again, it's not as bad necessarily as it sounds, but it's not good. What you got to remember in our government, though, is there's $2.2 trillion in unfunded liability for the public pension plans, like for all those civil service workers, and in health benefits for all those civil service workers and everything else. That's on top of all the rest of our stuff going on in debt and everything else. That's part of the reason we got to get independent while we have any money. They don't know what they're going to do with that $2.2 trillion they owe and how they're going to pay for it. Now, the Smith government did that LifeWorks report. They had that done a couple of years ago when they were talking about Alberta moving towards a pension plan. They took an interpretation of the Pension Act that, in my view, I even agree was a bit overly generous, and felt that Albertans would be entitled to more than half of the assets in that plan if we pulled out. I can understand because of the way they're calculating it and by how much Albertans over contributed on how that works. But look, it just wasn't going to happen, and it seemed almost like a too good to be true scenario. Now, the other end of the equation is Alberta leaves the plan and gets zero, from the asset plan, which isn't going to happen either. What's going to happen is somewhere in between taking zero from the asset pool and that what did they expect, 334 billion, which won't happen. There was supposed to be a report from the Parliamentary Budget Office to tell us then what number was Albertans were entitled to, because we are entitled to some. We paid into it, damn it. We have a part of that. And they delayed it and waited and dragged their feet. And then in December, they quietly released a report that gave a bunch of word salad, but still never actually answered the question. So let's look at just if we took it by population. Alberta is about 12% of the country. I think it's fair to say we should be able to take 12% of the pension asset pool. That's kind of straight across, hard to argue. Even though we over-contributed, fine. That would give us 84 billion as a fund to sit aside for an Alberta pension plan to begin. And then we were going to be collecting premiums from all the workers in Alberta into an Alberta pension plan, which would leave us, the way numbers are right now, if we kept it the same, with $5 billion extra dollars per year because of the way our demographics are. Now, we could do a number of things with that $5 billion a year. We should, again, put a large part of that into the fund so it builds up for people. But we could also increase benefits for people who are already collecting. We could also reduce perhaps the payments for the people who are working and putting in. We have those options in front of us. But the numbers are in our favor, that extra $5 billion a year. And that's just if it's straight across the board. So on top of that 84 billion, it's even better. What if the federal government says, we just aren't going to give you anything if you're becoming independent? We're not going to give you anything out of the pool. To hell with you, greedy Westerners. We're just going to keep it. Okay. Well, if we voted to go under the Clarity Act, it means the next step in that process is that the rest of the country is obligated to negotiate our separation in good faith. If they said they were going to keep the amount in that pool, in that fund that we are entitled to, that's not negotiating in good faith. So what would that lead to? Probably just a unilateral declaration of independence. Fine, we're out. Not to mention when you're talking about the negotiating, with all of the amount of national debt, over $1 trillion there, if you're expecting Alberta to carry part of that, well, you know what? No, we're not interested. We're not going to take it with us. That's how negotiation works, So, okay, fine. You're going to keep our 84 billion. We're just going to reduce that from the amount we said we were going to carry on the national debt. See, that's how negotiation works. We will get our portion. And we should take that opportunity, whether it's previous to independence, and there's more referendums coming. I suspect Premier Smith's going to want to hold one just on the pension plan alone. And I tell you what, Alberta would be very well served to pull out of the CPP. Hey, Quebec has done it. They're doing all right. It's not unprecedented. It's funny, when Quebec does those things, they're asserting themselves. When Albertans do it, we're arseholes. Well, too damn bad. We should pull out and take our portion. And even if it takes a few years, again, we got that $5 billion a year surplus that we can keep adding to our fund with until we get our capital as we deserve from things. Think of this plan right now, how it pays out too, as it's not a proper pension plan, because it's not setting up a fund for you. If you work your whole life and then at the age of 64 die in a freak blimp accident, you lost. You lost. It's not like there's a bunch of money that you paid into all your life that's going to go to your kids or to pay off the debts you accumulated or anything else. It's done. You're out. The government gets to keep it. You lost. Now, if you had a spouse, okay, potentially they could collect up to 60% of what would have been paid to you prior to your death. But if they're collecting a pension, if they worked, and most people are both working couples now because nobody can afford a single income family anymore, well, then their own pension gets deducted from it. So they don't get a chunk of that asset pool either. So again, it's not a good pension plan. It's not a real pension plan. It's more of a welfare plan. And by the way, yes, as I said, go independent, you're still depending on OAS, GIS. Alberta over-contributes into Confederation by $20 billion a year in general. We can afford the services to make sure to keep those top-ups. If we're pulling out of the Alberta pension plan prior to full provincial independence. Say provincial independence referendum didn't pass, but a referendum did pass for the pension plan. Well, it's written into the plan. There is a mechanism for provinces to leave. And one of it, too, though, is we can't, even if Albertans somehow had a really stupid government said, great, we got our own pension plan, what we're going to do is make it crappier for all our seniors. Why would we do that? I don't know. But let's say that was the scenario. Well, then the government could step in because it's under the law, says, no, any new plan has to at least match the benefits that the current plan is already offering. That's right in the legislation. So Alberta can't legally reduce the benefits of the pension plan, and nor would we. The other thing to think of too, so some of those numbers, and again, it gets calculated out. We've over-contribute, if you look at that just by the workers, it's about $1,400 per year per worker. Well, don't forget that's matched by employers. So you're looking at $2,800 per year more going in than coming out. Again, we can decide what we want to do with that. I mean, what I would like to see, cut it in half, reduce what businesses and workers both have to put in by half, and then take the other half of that and put it into the pool, put it in the plan for more benefits for those who are retired, and make it a real pension plan. Build a fund so that there's an entitlement. And when a person, if they haven't spent their pension, however that may work, when they reach the end of their days, what they've put in is still kind of come back to their family, their heirs, a charity, whatever they want to do, because it's their money. The Canada pension plan as it is right now, guys, isn't your money. If it was, you could withdraw it. If it was, you could say, I want it dedicated here or there when I pass, and it isn't. So they kind of like you dying early. Kind of gives you some of the idea why they like the MAID program so much too, doesn't it? We have a lot of reasons to get out of the CPP. We got a lot of reasons to get out of the Federation, but we got a lot of, as I said, fair and valid questions from Albertans, likewise in Saskatchewan and others, worried about what their status would be with a new independent West, particularly when it comes to the pension. So I tell you what, guys, when you look at all of these numbers, we can only do better. We certainly won't do worse. We should remove that question mark. It's one of the things we can do before becoming fully independent. I think, if we don't make it in that one referendum, we should still be getting our own pension plan, getting our provincial police force, all of these things. But, use these numbers, look this stuff up. It's all out there because we need to convince people one by one why it's important. Don't forget, you got that $2.2 trillion unfunded liability sitting with all those civil servants and such sitting there with those public pension plans. I'd rather get out of that and make sure we have a decent pension plan for those of us who are really working hard out here, being overtaxed and under-delivered when it comes to services coming back to us. So that's the latest on this. My next video coming up in this series, because it has been well received, and I want to, by the way, email me if you want, cmorgan@westernstandard.news. Tell me what else we want to talk about independence-wise. I'm going to keep doing these because people we've never seen independence support this high, not since the 80s. And they want to know how we're going to get there, how to make themselves better advocates for it, how to get over that line to full independence. And then I'm going to share my experience over 20 years in the independence movement. Oh, more than that. Man, I'm getting on. I'm not ready for pension yet, though. And I'm going to talk again, because it's coming up again with political parties and independence parties. Guys, I'll save it for the next video, but I'm going to talk about that. And no, I don't think we really need them. As well, if you want to get the whole thing in a reading form, this is where I do, again, the self-serving plug as usual. I wrote the Sovereigntists Handbook. I started the Alberta Independence Party, 25 years ago. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm going to share those mistakes with you so we don't have to make them again. We can make brand new mistakes. The book's available on Amazon. The link is available down in the video description. Let's keep carrying on, guys. The momentum's on our side. Independence isn't out of reach. We can do it and make for a better West.